love to see you. Come whenever you like. And, I mean, there are other people, but you're on the list. Come early if you like. It's no problem.
Shiloh Rubin, she's amazing. I mean, she must be the first lady of casting in Europe, you know. She's based in Rome. She went there as a young woman from New Jersey. She could offer me this smorgasbord of talent. And I tell you what, some of her suggestions for, like, get this person, get that person, they were spot on. She knew where Maya Morgenstern was. I'd never heard of her. She said, you know, there's a woman in Romania who may have, and then she showed me another film she was in, and the film started off with a close-up of her, a big close-up, and I thought, that's her, get her down here immediately. And she was indeed perfect. I mean,
I read the script. I found it beautiful. Beautiful, very philosophical, very intelligent, very intense, and very poetic.
Mel grabs me and says, you gotta look at this tape. This is I Found Mary. So he shows me this tape, and I look at her and I said, well, she's great. But he told me it's, you know, 10 years old. I said, well, but Mel, that's 10 years ago. He goes, she's hired. I said, well, how can you hire somebody from a tape that is 10 years old? He goes, that's Mary.
I wanted her to experience the suffering herself with a certain sense of acceptance, you know, to be grief-stricken, but not to let it overwhelm her dignity. I didn't want her breaking down and, like, bawling and screaming and stuff, because most people would do that. I wanted her to have almost a mystical connection or understanding with what was going on, with that knowledge, so that she could actually bear it, although it was unbearable. To get someone to do that convincingly, you needed an actress who was very soulful, and of course Maya is an extremely soulful person, and extremely sweet and kind, and, you know, and capable of doing wondrous things. And it wasn't much, but it was enough. You know, whatever she was doing was amazing. And she was with child at the time. She didn't tell us that. So she had this other kind of glow going on. I didn't figure that out till like about halfway through the shoot. I saw her waddling up to the set, and I said, hey. And she went, I'm busted, right? Yeah, I said, yeah. So.
Do they call Francesco's, do they call him Frank here?
No, they call
Certo.
Ciccio, yes, nickname,
vabbè.
because I come from south of Italy. And when in south of Italy, Francesco is Ciccio or Chicco.
Sì, perché poi
the south end of the name, right?
When Francesco De Vito came in the room, you know, you played Peter. I mean, it was instant. The guy was just perfect. He had sort of childlike innocence, and he looked kind of rough and busted up, and, you know, it was just perfect. So you knew instantly, you know. He didn't even have to talk. I got excited, you know.
I mean, the great thing about doing the film in Aramaic and Latin from the point of view of casting is that Mel could cast anybody from anywhere. You didn't have to have someone who spoke English. Maya Morgenstern comes from Romania, and the guy who played Pilate comes from Bulgaria. And, you know, there are a lot of actors, obviously, from Italy and from North Africa and everywhere.
You know, within 10 or 15 minutes, just talking about the weather, you get a sense of someone, what they're capable of. The only thing I did have to know was whether or not they could pronounce some of this Aramaic stuff.
Okay. أنت سائمك ورامين تريل لوشرنا بناء الهيكلة تا هاك نزرعية هاي ثايمه دورين ربرابين.
We'd throw a couple of lines at them, pronounce it, get them to pronounce it back. If they did even a half-good job and I liked them, they were on. So that wasn't the main obstacle. It was whether they'd be able to bring some kind of truth to it, you know.
Ant uti yalla dutater mi famrach.
Those parts are great. You know, those little cameo parts are real showcase pieces for these guys.
Monica Bellucci, you know, Mel knew who she was. You know, she was, you know, in his heart, Monica was probably Mary Magdalene from the get-go, but he wouldn't admit it to himself.
And by this time, you're starting to rock, Magdalene, just rocking kind of nuts.
She had a big name, and he really didn't want stars in the film, but, you know, every time he'd look at a potential Mary Magdalene, Monica's name would come up again. So eventually he got tired. He just accepted fate, and we had Monica, so, and she's so great.
And she's beautiful. I mean, she's really great to look at. I think one of the favorite shots of mine in the film is when she's just sitting and the wind's hitting her hair. And it's just like, almost like it's this far away from a shampoo commercial, but, you know, I just left it in there just because it looked great. A formidable presence.
What what a trooper Monica was. She was always there, ready to go to work, and something always came up where we didn't need her, and she never complained. She was just there to do her job, and she did a great job.
The Christ figure is usually portrayed as some little kind of scrawny guy, and Jim isn't that. He's masculine and big, and that was very important for me.
Mel pulling out a picture of one of the gossip magazines, I'm not sure, but it was a little image of this actor named Jim Caviezel, and I don't know who he was, quite frankly, but I'd heard his name, but he said, you know, this is the only American I think that could actually play this role of Jesus.
Oddly enough, a man came to me about 6 months before Mel Gibson did and said, you know, I think you'll be playing Jesus. I said, well, that's kind of an odd statement. And he says, yeah, well. And then 6 months went by, and I got a phone call that Steve McAvity, who is Mel Gibson's producing partner, wanted to meet with me on a movie called Mavericks. So I went to the meeting, and we spoke for a while, and then Mel Gibson showed up. And the interview kind of turned direction. We started talking about faith, and as he brought it up, I said, I just felt this need to say to him, because all of a sudden, what I heard 6 months prior to this, all of a sudden I remembered that, and I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he says, well, yeah. And I said, okay.
One has not had to go on a creative curve of getting around the idea of Jim Caviezel playing Jesus. He was always going to be the guy, and he's acquitted himself very, very well. Can't think of anybody else that could have done it.
He was perfect. I mean, he came tailor-made to do this. He was able to put aside any of his personal kind of wants and just be, which is all that was required, really. It just be in this situation. And it was, I don't know, he pulled it off. I mean, that's one of the hardest things to do. And I defy anybody else to try that. I don't think there's anybody else. There's another aspect of him that's just otherworldly or inspired or higher. Sometimes you'd forget about everything and just get zoned right in onto what he was doing. It'd be really interesting. And it wouldn't be necessarily the way you visualized it, but you'd get something else, but it wasn't bad. It was like, wow, I never thought of that, you know? And, you know, you'd talk with him about it between takes, and then he'd go and do it again. He wasn't trying anything. It just happened, you know? And that effortlessness and ease with which he just let that happen was, I think, boy, you don't often see that. There's not a performance like it.